Hey everybody, it's Justin with Service and Sacrifice, and today I have with us Brandon. Brandon, do you want to give us a quick intro?
Yeah. Hey, my name is Brandon. Was in the Navy for 12 years. I was part of a Facebook group with Justin here, and so we linked up. Right now, I live in the Eastern North Carolina area out here in Wilmington. Got out in 2023. I was a nuke on submarines. Spent, like I said, about 12 years in that. Did West Coast, East Coast. Did instructor tour in between there, and now I work as an operations supervisor down here. Uh, Pretty much it.
Why'd you pick Navy when you joined?
Oh man, so yeah, that's a good question. So I was 18 and I got a internship my senior year at high school with a local company in town, working quality control. Booming company, they were doing awesome. I mean, I had dreadlocks down to my waist at the time. They started paying for me to go to college after I got out of high school, graduated, and then being 18 or 19 years old, I think I made it about a year. I had a bad day at work and I decided, well, I'm going to go see a recruiter. And my grandfather was in the Navy and he had always talked about being in the Navy my whole life growing up. So, of course, I walked right into the Navy recruiter's office and took the little ASFAB there and they said, awesome, we'll sign you up.
So you didn't even go to any other branches, huh?
No, I just walked right in there. I don't know if my grandfather would have been too proud of me if I joined another branch, to be honest. He probably would have, but Navy was definitely where I always felt like that's where I can go.
Yeah, and you said you joined in what year? 13?
2011 is when I joined, and I got out in 2023.
Oh, okay, so you haven't been out that long.
Now about coming up on 2 years here.
Yeah, I joined the Army in 2010, a little bit before you. I got out in 2013 though. I was done with one contract. Did you did you re-enlist or did you just do like a super long contract?
No, well, my rate had me doing a pretty long contract. It was 4 years when you sign up, and then 4 years IRR, and then once you complete A school, you added a year on or something like that. It ended up being basically 6 years with 2 years on the back end in the ready reserves. And then I did what everybody does. I swore I was going to get out, and I reenlisted, and then I swore I was going to get out again, and I reenlisted a third time. So
Did you get any bonuses?
I did. That was a huge factor in it. My first bonus, I got tax free, the CENTCOM area. And then my last bonus, it was taxed, that's for sure. Uncle Sam took a chunk, but I definitely I got some serious money for it, so it helped out a lot. It was one of the big retention perks for some of our rates.
Nice. And you said you worked, I'm going to butcher your job, something nuclear.
Yeah, it was a nuclear electrician's mate, and basically just working on the reactor side of the house. For their power generation. They have surface and submarine, and I did subs.
How'd you like it?
I think what I used to say all the time, and I haven't really thought about it for a while, but it used to be I thought submarines were one of the few places that you could find some old school, like the old Navy still. So I liked it. It was pretty rugged for sure, but it was a small unit, so you could always do fairly well. It sucked for 2 years where qualifying and learning everything. You definitely were the low man on the totem pole, but nobody I've ever met looks back and really regrets it that much. They enjoyed the people aspect of it a ton.
My grandpa was in the Navy on a submarine. I don't know what his job was, and I don't know how to pronounce what the submarine was called, but it was during World War II. He got drafted. He never talked about it. He actually passed away like 2 days after I got to basic. So I got back from training and then I found out like he passed. But yeah, I always thought being on a submarine was pretty cool. But like in movies, it just looks like I'd get very claustrophobic.
It's so funny because first off, I always commend, like, anytime I hear a World War II sub sailor, I mean, those, I get goosebumps. I wish my camera quality was better, but those dudes are seriously the giants. Like, we stand on their shoulders for sure. And their tradition runs deep still. That's what I'm saying, is that old tradition and heritage is still present in the sub force. But yeah, you think claustrophobic, and I swear, like, you'll be sitting normal distance away from people the day you go underway, but then maybe, a few weeks later, you're sitting about four people deep where you used to sit one or two people. You just kind of lose that sensitivity to some of that stuff. I think it was only later on, really in my time, where I got started thinking about it from a different aspect. I was like, man, this is like kind of scary. There really is no place to go. But it didn't really happen that often. It was much later in my time.
Did each time you re-enlisted, did you stay in the same MOS?
Yeah, I did. It was actually really hard for us to change, our rate or our MOS. You had to being a nuke, they put so much time in it. You go to like on average about 18 months or so of schooling. And so that amount of time they invest in you, and if you pass, eventually they really don't want you going anywhere else. But you can. They're definitely open to a little bit of change now compared to when I first joined.
Yeah, that makes sense. So your civilian job now, are you like an electrician or something? Like did your skills carry over?
Yeah, I think that was the first job I took out was directly relative. It was doing electrician things. I got the classic reality shock of entering the real world after your time in, and I ended up coming to this job, and this job's more of definitely skill relative, but it's not necessarily doing electrical things. It was the longer you stay in or the group, the longer you're with that unit, you end up building some of those leadership skills to that focus or field. And so I do a lot of the relative same stuff here as an operations supervisor, just a little bit hands off.
Yeah, and so second big question I ask everybody, why did you get out?
Yeah, I thought about this question earlier today because I had figured you'd ask it. And I think if I'm being honest with myself, I think I probably told 2 or 3 or 4 different reasons why I've gotten out that I can all justify. But the end point was I started thinking, like, I'm just not happy doing this. It was pretty taking a toll on me. You start hearing from senior people the longer you stay in, like, man, everybody starts saying the same things. They're all saying that they're choosing the Navy over their family, or they don't know what to do other than this. And I started thinking about that. I lived out near Seattle, was one of my duty stations, and I went to like 2 concerts out there the whole time. I'm a huge music fan, so I couldn't do any of that stuff. And I started thinking about all that. And I think really getting out my mental happiness was taking a toll. I was eligible for my next progression in the cycle, I guess, through the ranking system, next job. And I really didn't want to do that job at all. It wasn't fun to me. So I just thought now or never. I just got married about a month before I got out of the Navy. And so it's a good time to kind of start new and figure something out. I thought the money would be great getting out, and for the most part that is, and skills transferred pretty easily for me. But yeah, it's definitely a little bit of a shock for sure. So I think about that all the time. I think the bottom line is my mental state and happiness was taking a toll.
Well, you got pretty close to the 20. Were there any thoughts of like trying to do something federal to get that retirement?
Yeah, there was. I actually worked for a company that I thought that they had a contract with the Naval Shipyard in Virginia. And I thought, man, this'll be sweet. It'll transfer over. But, I had interviewed for a position, several positions actually, that would have got me right into that federal area, but the pay was just you know, the gap was just too big as to what some of my other competitive offers were. And so I kind of thought, well, I got out at 12, not 20. That's like a little over half of that time. So I try to separate myself from that thought because it kind of makes me cringe. Every day that I get closer, I'm like, man, I could have had that. To be honest, I still haven't done a VA claim, and I've been out almost 2 years. I put in an intent to file, but that's it. I'm just so lazy when it comes to that stuff. It's the honest line. And yeah, I try not to think about it sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you. Like one of my buddies who's still in, I think he's in E7 now, and we went to basic at the same time, and he's like, yeah, I can retire in 5 years. And I'm like, but like it's easy to think that way, right? Like, oh, 5 more years and I'd get pension. But like it's a long time. That's a lot of your life having to do things not on your own schedule. Because like as a civilian, you can pretty much do whatever you want. If I want to go take vacation tomorrow, fly to Florida for a week, I can go do it. If I want to go on a 4-day vacation up to like New England, I don't have to ask my boss. I can just call out sick. Like in the military, you have to like put in paperwork or take block leave and they can reject it. And it's all these crazy rules. So like it's tough. I commend anyone who does 20 years because like I couldn't do it. It was way too much nonsense for me.
Yeah, for sure. I went to a friend's retirement last year, and it was really awesome because at the end of his retirement, he did a roast. He just sat in a chair, and everybody could get up and roast him. He was that kind of person. He was an '05 too, which made it even better. Or an '04, one of those shiny, higher ranking ones. And so I ended up getting up there, and that's exactly what I told him. I was like, you did it. I couldn't. Good on you for doing that. So yeah, that's wild. But you're right. I think back all the time about, and I joined when I was 20, and I ended up living out my 20s on my first tour, pretty much. And let me tell you, it was wild. Like there were some absolute wild nights, spoils of war. There was hotels like I've never seen hotel rooms get messed up before and port calls. It was crazy. And I do think back and I'm like, man, I did give up my 20s and they were great times and I had great friends, but now I'm in my 30s and you kind of get out and you're like, okay, well, I gotta do this, and this now. Clock's ticking. I just got married, and so all that stuff kind of goes so quick. It's a
Yeah,
good
well,
good perspective.
if it makes you feel any better, your 20s, in my opinion, weren't really like that great. I got out and I was 23, and I still tried to like live that mindset of like, oh, we'll go out to happy hour and like we'll go have fun. And like it's cool for a bit, but it's like it's just kind of the same thing. And you're still like in your 20s, you're trying to like find a stable career. In my opinion, the 30s are much better. Like hopefully you have a good career, you have enough experience that you could potentially be making a good amount of money. 20s is just kind of rough. Like people are getting out of college. It's all messy. But I see on social media a lot Navy dudes talking about all the ports they go to, and it looks so cool. Like I saw this one guy who was like Portugal, Spain, Guam, like Indonesia, like all these crazy destinations. And you guys, you go there for like, I don't know, 4 days or something. You do your port call. And I'm like, that's so cool. Like we never got those opportunities in the Army.
Yeah, I think that's what I think was the saving grace to my 20s and in the statement I was just talking about. You go underway and you're like, man, it is. I used to call it the weekend in Florida with the boys because we were out of Virginia at the time, and it seemed like every 6 weeks we pulled in for a long weekend on the beach in Florida with the boys. And so you just get off and you're like, well, I haven't spent this money. Let's go. You're an E3 or E4, maybe an E5, and so you just go blow every penny you had on some vodka cranberries and you know, get sunburnt so bad, do it all over again. You just go back in your tube of darkness and get out and go back to Florida, have a good time. So I think that was our saving grace for sure.
You guys do that thing on submarines that they do in movies where you like you come above water and then they open the hatch and people like stand on it to get sunlight
Yeah.
and stuff.
Yeah, we do that every now and then. We did like a few swim calls and stuff like that. And so we'll just like pull up somewhere. Depends on what kind of ops you're on. I don't know the logistics behind how the decision's made to do it or not. But I had a captain. I think he really liked swimming, and we must have done 4 or 5 during that tour. And you just pull up, and you can either, we'll be out somewhere in the ocean that's really deep, and people will just be jumping off the side of the boat. I think it was my third time before I did that. But then pulling into port and stuff like that, absolutely is they'll open it up because you need somebody to catch mooring lines and be ready for the tugboats to come alongside and all that. I think the coolest thing I ever did the first time I ever went topside, as nukes were usually back in the engine room dealing with that stuff. And the first time I ever got called topside, I was on watch. I was going through the Suez Canal and coming out to transit back across the Atlantic. And I got called up to be a phone talker. My rate was, I guess, well known for being good phone talkers. And so I got called up and I'm sitting in the junior most watch in the engine room. And I got called up to go up in the sail, the part of the sub that sticks out of the water. Sub's on the surface at this point, but the sail's the taller part. I got called up there to go be a phone talker. And it was the coolest thing in the world because it was pitch black. I forget what time it was. It was way early in the morning and pitch black. And I got to watch the sunrise over the Suez and hear all the phone comms coming through on VHF and stuff like that. It was just one of those memories I'll never forget. That's for sure. Get your pilot on board that can transit through there is pretty wild. So yeah, that was cool.
What rank did you get out as?
I got out as a E7.
Oh, snap. Okay. That's good. I mean, so wait, you said when you got out, they were going to put you to 8? Is that
No, I
promote you to
was
8 or no?
eligible. Like I met the qualification requirements for it. Who knows how long it would have been if I was lucky. Maybe I would have got selected. If not, then so be it. But that was the next progression. I was qualified on paper for it. What the selection
Gotcha.
board decides is another story. I've never been part of one, so I can't really speak to it too much.
Yeah, I mean, that happens to my buddies. Like, they're on the E8 list, which means like they'll get it, but it could take like 2 years. Yeah, you just have to wait. I figure we'll move down these topics you wanted to talk about. I'll just go in
Sure.
order for you. You wanted to talk about toxic leadership. Anything specific?
Yeah, I think with toxic leadership, I see it all the time. I work with people who have got out after one tour a lot in this job and in my previous job, and I still talk to some of the. My last unit was really tight. That's where I did my senior tour at, or senior most tour at, I should say. You got a different perspective of it after that, so maybe that's why I still talk to these guys all the time. But I absolutely agreed with them. But as a Navy chief, it was, which is a E7 rank. You run a division. I had about 15 to 20 people in my division, varied depending on who's cycling. But you get to hear a lot of the time all the gripes and complaints that come out about that, about the leadership. There's standards so high that we have two of them, and stuff like that. And Navy chiefs they can't do their physical readiness test or anything like that, because they got guts hanging down to the ground, and but they always pass somehow with flying colors, and whatever it is, or people just get treated like crud. I made it and I swear it was the only way I survived, to be honest. My tour was because of the people I had in my division, and the fact that I didn't really just try and slide in with those same standards. I actively worked with them and heard a lot of those gripes, and I probably took it a little too personal anytime somebody had a complaint about something like that. But those guys busted it so hard, and they ended up, my last unit ended up doing female integration as well, so guys and girls both worked so hard to get stuff done. And so it was just really frustrating to me when they felt, and I wasn't perfect, but if they felt that this toxic leadership thing was going on, where it was favoritism, or, you know, you were just going to continue getting wrecked into the ground, that was all stuff that I took way too personally. Like, I wouldn't even sit at training and tolerate, if people would try to answer a question, somebody would scream out wrong at them. I would be like, dude, like, that person was raising their hand, like, absolutely not. And I would just shit all over that person, to be honest. Really, that cultural shift was, people are getting out because a lot of what I saw was they didn't like the leadership. I mean, that was part of my last encounter. I had a re-enlistment set up in March, and I got in an argument with my boss in March about the way the leadership was going. And I said, well, fine, I'm not re-enlisting. And I decided to get out 2 months later. That was it. Hey, my EOS is here. So with the toxic leadership, such a huge spectrum of stuff that flies into that. That is what I think a huge problem is, whether it's the mental health aspect. As nukes, if you had mental health, you were afforded the ability to go get mental help. Nobody ever said no, but it would have significant impacts on your career path, one way or another, and whether toxic leadership played into that, I can't really confirm one way or the other, but I know that if people left to go get mental health, they would come back, and it was a tough journey for them. People would probably say they're soft, and that to me bugged me. Or people that, if you were on duty and, on a submarine, if you're in port, you have duty on average as a junior enlisted, so E6 and below, you would have duty for 24 hours straight every third day, maybe every fifth day, if you were in a really lucky qualified command. Those people would then end up working weekends. You can do the math. You end up, how many duty-free weekends do you have? It's like once every 3 weeks, you have a Friday and Saturday night off, and you have Saturday and Sunday both off. So the amount of work these people put in was just incredible. And the fact that, some of them felt disrespected, or that their time was wasted, or that the senior leadership wasn't looking out for them. And that was huge for me. I remember one time our XO had a call with all the chiefs. We go in there and we're getting ready to pull into port and do all this, availability and maintenance stuff. And he said, what's the feedback you got for me? What do you need me to push on the project team with? And nobody said anything. And I had been a chief for like maybe a year and a half at this point. I was still pretty green. I remember telling him, I said, well, sir, when you expect us to get creative and find solutions to these problems, understand that we're going to do it. And I'm going to end up grinding my guy's face into the ground to get it done. And I need you to know that I'm not going to just settle for doing that nonstop while we're in port. They're not going to be here some days, or they're going to take care of their family. this guy's got a family with, children playing t-ball and he wants to go coach them. Like, hell yeah, dude, go figure out how to do it. And it was hard because you just got to pull the trigger sometimes and go do it and figure it out. Weekend equivalent liberty, you work Sunday, you get Friday off. You work Saturday, you get Monday off. You're always going to have 2 consecutive days off. Stuff like that really worked out for us. I see it all the time on Facebook and still hear it from some of the guys. They're like, man, this chief was absolute misery. And I hate thinking of that. Not me, but them. They hate reminiscing about their time because of that person, or they're getting out because of that leader that they had. It could be so many different things, but it boils down to the way they were treated. I see that in the group of chiefs I got selected with. We had a Facebook group. I think I'm still part of it. And it was like, be the change, do the things you weren't going to do or you hated. And it's so easy to get sucked into, hey, I'm going to go watch a movie with the boys behind the closed door to the Chiefs quarters because junior guys are scared to go in there. Or, hey, we can pause it because they got to knock and enter first. And it's like, not to say I didn't do that, dude, because like full transparency, I'm sure I was a piece of shit at times, but there was definitely, people who were rack hounds. And my first chief, I'll never forget, he took himself off the watch bill. He ended up not standing any watch during whole underway, and he spent more time in the rack than I've ever seen anybody in my life. We used to joke that the maintenance was to go flip him over in bed so he didn't get bed sores. I thought about that a lot. I don't want to be that person that's so far away from my guys. You also had to maintain cohesion of the unit, though. Like, I can't go out there and have a completely different set of standards than the rest of the leadership mess. You got to uphold something, but I think I really challenged the way we did things and operated as a group. And that cultural shift, I think, when the guys saw that somebody was looking out for them, they did everything to elevate our division as a whole and make ourselves respectable to the point where people said, okay, that's what they need to do to get by and they're going to take care of themselves. Let them do it. And I didn't ask permission and we just did it. And I think, if anything, I hope it made some of their lives better. I think it did. I look at a lot of those guys now. Sometimes they get messages that they're eligible for chief now, or they make selection board, and we have conversations. Or I've had a couple people reach out to me to say thanks for helping me realize what I want to be with this, or mentor me through my leadership. And so that's pretty important to me.
Yeah, what you mentioned people getting mental health and then it having impacts on their careers. What are some examples that you saw where, like, their command obviously said you can go because you can't really like prevent that. But what were some of the repercussions that the units kind of took out?
Yeah, as a nuke in the Navy, if you're on certain medications or if you have certain conditions, you're disqualified from being around a nuclear reactor. Full transparency, I'm speaking a lot of opinion here, but with that, I believe the basis is around a safety basis for a lot of that stuff. But if you're assessing what's causing a lot of that mental health condition, I think some of those terrible working hours and whatnot are, those are things that contribute to it. But, if you go and get help for something, you've now left the division to go take care of yourself like you should. And then now you get disqualified while you're getting the treatment you need. Okay. So now the division's hurt because they're down one person. Now you got one less watchstander. Now you got one less person to go underway, one less person to cover for T-ball practice for the dad or mom. And so, a lot of people who maybe don't take the time or aren't experienced around it could easily view that as, hey, this guy ditched us because he's soft. And I've seen it with senior enlisted too. One of my really good friends, I still talk to him. I try to do it at least once every couple of weeks, but once or twice a month, at least we call each other and just have a conversation for a couple hours. And he went through a really rough time. He was also a nuke with me on my last tour, and he went and sought mental help. And his division definitely went and, didn't have a chief, didn't have a leader for a time. And so they struggled a little bit too. They had some other issues going on, but when he went to get that mental help, he's now close to retirement as well. And hey, the boat's maybe got to go underway. So when you're gone and then you come back, can you imagine that? What the rest of the chief's quarters is thinking, or your division, or the rest of the people that you work around are thinking? So that kind of, not only are you delayed in accomplishing the objectives or checks in the boxes of advancement, but that's also going to show a gap on your evaluations, or people are just going to kind of not accept you as much. And so I think that's a huge transition that the force is going through now. The Navy has made huge advances in mental health, but the Navy is they're a huge organization. When you get into organizations that big or at a DoD level, tell me there's not going to be some bureaucracy embedded in that black and white ink. It's not that simple, especially when you're asking people to operate in decentralized commands. That's incredible to me. Every body is needed. Every single person, every single watch station, and every single redundancy is needed. Imagine a submarine. You've only got so much room for people. You've only got so much room for food. So imagine you need to go somewhere, and just be all super secret and stealthy and be able to accomplish an objective. And then what? Now you've got one less person to do it. That makes it really difficult to fill the gap. And so it's a tough space from a purely operational standpoint to be in. It's a space we need to deal with from taking care of our people, because if you don't have somebody to turn the wrench, you don't have a boat. It's that simple. Every decision you make is going to have an effect on the person turning the wrench. So think twice about it before you make it, But there is that other aspect that there's at a high level an objective to be accomplished. Bridging that gap and finding a realistic solution is 100% necessary.
Yeah, I knew a good amount of people because, they higher ups always say it on the safety briefs, right? Like either end of day or every weekend, obviously don't get into trouble, do all those bad things. And if you need help, like go see behavioral health, they always would say like, it's right down the road. It's in the building, go see it. And they made it very clear, like you can take time out of whatever we're doing. If we're in the field, if we're at the range, like they will not stop you from going to see your therapist. But one thing I noticed when I was like, 19, 20, 21, seeing people go, sometimes it was like a mixture of like privates that were just like having a hard time probably adapting, right, to the military. And then the other half was the E5s through 6s, probably some 7s, but the E5s and 6s who all went to like Iraq in the beginning, they were going and like it didn't all click at the time because like you don't notice everything happening in real time, but like their personal lives were completely falling apart. Like they came back from Iraq or Afghanistan. They always got divorced. I mean, you hear stories of like one of my buddy's wives like took all his money when he was in Afghanistan, left. And then, you come back, you work these crazy hours. Like a lot of times I've mentioned on other episodes, we would get done at like 2 or 3 o'clock working really hard, right? And, we've been up since like 5:30 and still our commander would be like, nah, you guys got to wait till like 6 for no reason. Just got to sit there. And it's like little things like that just like chip away at the unit's morale, right? Like, coming in on Sunday, somebody got a DUI, so mass punishment. You all have to stay here for 8 hours. Saturday, spend half the day cleaning your gear because Monday you have an inspection. It just like, it never ended. I don't remember like ever having a weekend where I was like, wow, I can relax and like go to the city for a day, right? Like it was always doing something for the next week. And I get it, right? Like a lot of people will be like, that's what it is. Like you're working for the government. You're putting your country first. And it's like, yes, but look how many people are having mental health problems because they can't see their family and their kids. And then like spouses get upset because the significant other is always working. And then they have marital issues and then they have depression because of that. And then maybe that soldier, if the unit just was good and had good leadership and cared for people, maybe you'd have a ton of people who want to do 20 years, right? Because then you have experienced leaders. People want to stay in to get their pension and their benefits, but instead people are just bouncing. And when I was a young private, I saw all my artillery chiefs getting out at like 12 to 15 years, just like you did. It blew my mind. I was like, I went up to all of them. I was like, Sergeant, why are you getting out? You got 7 years left, right? You get your pension, which I don't know. I had no clue how much pension was back then, but like that was the big thing, right? Pension. And they were just like, all of them were just like, I'm done. And I understand why, because I had a surprising amount of units that I went to in 3 years. First unit was really great. I loved it. My first sergeant and my captain were super cool, level-headed. Like captain would come up to you, chit chat, how's your day, whatever. My last unit, complete opposite. Like I was just like, I felt like they didn't care at all. And when it came time for reenlistment, I was like, I can't take the risk of signing up for another 3 years and getting another unit that also sucks.
Yeah,
You know what I
that's
mean?
100%. I mean, that's something I can relate to. The Navy is pretty similar. I mean, you've got a CO of each time you transfer. And as a nuke, we transfer every 4 years, and the likelihood of going back to the same boat or ship is not that great. Maybe if you go to a carrier, but even then, your CO is going to change out. Your leadership is going to be changed out. Their tours are way different timed. I had two captains on my last boat, and the third was coming on. So I got there right as the first one was relieving. He was there for my tour, and if I would have finished out and re-enlisted and stayed the extra time, then I would have had a third captain on there. And so, each one's got different standards in the way they act. And I'm telling you, the difference is solely people who believe in. I'm going to sound real cheesy here, but this is the fact: is people who believe in limitless opportunities. Like the difference is people who are willing to go out there and to find unique ways to get stuff done. I'm not talking about grinding people's faces into the ground and working late or those just in case hours. We all know just in case. Like, get that out and get uncomfortable. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's where you're going to make the sausage and figure out how to make people's lives better. And maybe that means it's painful for the leadership for a little bit while they figure out the nuances of it. But there's like two things sailors care about, and it's money and time off. And that was like, if I can give them one of those things, they're going to keep their family happy and be able to tolerate it, And I asked for somebody to come in on an off hour because there's some emergency, or the night before an underway. I need somebody to come in and say goodbye to their family 12 hours earlier unexpectedly. No problem getting a volunteer for that. And so that's, I hate it because I really do think deep down, I had one of the best captains to ever exist in the Navy, who was a hero. And his name was Benjamin Grant. And the dude's still in. That dude, his motto was treat people and parts like parts. And if you didn't do that, you were going to find out real quick. I never heard the man really raise his voice, maybe twice. I heard him, and it was very well justified. And the rest of the times, he was so focused on people that people loved him, and he didn't tolerate the talk without the action. So that's a huge thing. I definitely agree with you on that.
What do you mean by 4-year friends and the trauma
Yeah,
bonding?
yeah. I think I call them 4-year friends in the
Oh,
Navy.
like every enlistment people?
Yeah, every time you transfer like to a different unit or command, you make these incredible friends. They're the best friends you're ever going to have in the world. But here I am 2 years out, and I think I've got two or three that I still talk to pretty closely, maybe four, and we still meet up with some. I mean, I drive down to South Carolina from here. It's like a 3-hour drive. Every time I'm down there, one of the guys I know will just drop everything and we meet up and we spend exuberant amounts of time talking and just having drinks and stuff. And just, I don't know what it is, but yeah, 4-year friends is probably one of the tougher parts I've had about getting out. Like, that transition is rugged. Slap me right in the face, silly. But getting to realize, like, here I am in my mid 30s, and I know you're going to air this recording, but let me tell you, there is nothing more embarrassing than literally getting on here right now and saying, how do you make friends at 30? Like, I'm not that miserable of a person. Like everybody, I've got my little ticks, but dude, you used to be forced into that aspect, and it just came naturally because you were all enduring such suck together. Now, as it goes further away, things dwindle more and more and more and more, and it's almost sad, like thinking about how close you were to some of those people. They were like your best friends ever, and now who do you got? You got a couple of them left, and it's just kind of mind blowing. Did you find that through your time? Your time in, did you have transferring units? I'm not sure how fast you transferred units or not, but
Yeah, so I talked about this on the last episode a bit. So the military is a really interesting situation because you have all these people from different walks of life, right? Different, raised by families with different values, different like amounts of money. So people like had different, privileges and such. And you put them all in this one location doing 15 hours a day worth of shitty stuff, right? And it took me a long time. This is going to sound kind of negative, but it's not meant to be negative. It took me a long time to accept that like you only have any connection to those people because you served with them, right? Like if I ran into one of them at like a football game and I didn't know who they were, we probably wouldn't get along because like I didn't I didn't like them because of like their interests and hobbies. I was just forced to hang out with them all day, and we like found that was the only thing bonding us together. And so when I got out, like I think everyone has this like false realization that like oh, my leaders are going to reach out to me. Like 6 months later, my E6 is going to be like, Justin, how's it going? Are you like, is everything good? Like, you got money, you got a job, you using your benefits. Nobody did shit. Like, the second, it feels like the second you say definitively, I'm not re-enlisting, you're just that dude who's getting out. And all 3 years of your unit being like, we're brothers, we're family, this is a safe space, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like they just say that. And I'm sure the good leaders mean it. There's friends out there, but like, yeah, dude, I've met hundreds of people. I mean, I was with the same group of 60 dudes in my battery for like 2+ years. I talked to maybe five still, like 5 people over a decade ago. And the thing is, because like I don't know, it would make me feel, I'd get down on myself too, right? Like, why doesn't anyone want to like stay in contact? Like, were we not actually cool? But dude, everyone's thinking the same way that you are, right? Your buddies who also got out or who are still in, maybe they're probably sitting at home at the end of the day and they're like, man, nobody's reaching out to me either. Like, I'm just all here by myself. I've found that like if you just reach out, send a Facebook message, send an Instagram DM, and you're like, yo, dude, how you been? The conversation will pick right back up. It's really weird. Like, I haven't talked to you in 10 years. How you doing? But it is odd because like they're so consumed with their military life still and all the new people they're meeting and the soldiers they're training that they're not thinking about people they used to serve with, you know?
Yeah, dude, that's wild. To be honest, I never kind of, thought that perspective. Um, it's 100%. I was talking about the one buddy that I was going down South Carolina to see. Last conversation we had, I had told him, I said, I'm kind of at the point where people have their lives and they have their interests and what they like and don't like and what they're busy with, and people are having families. Like, this is what, if you can make time, cool, but nobody's really at the point where they're going out of their way. And you shouldn't expect that. If you want to be in my life, then you know, let's hang out and stuff, or call each other and whatnot. I saw it when I was in, and it was so weird to me that, some of this leadership would retire after they're 20. On my shore duty, I saw it all the time. I was still in E6 at the time. People were retiring left and right at this command. It was like 3,000 people at the command. And they, every now and then one would reach out to me that I worked with, and it was just a Facebook message you never get back to sometimes, or the conversation that you start sending memes back and forth, and then it's one less message this week and one less the next, and next thing you know, you haven't talked in years. It's just so much coming back all at the same time. You're like, okay, I've seen this before. Now I'm living it. And then you gain perspective, like, you were just talking about. It's kind of, I know I could call some of these people up, and that for sure would happen. I'm lucky. I do get to talk with a lot of the guys I served with in my last tour still to this day. I think one of the things I was really successful at was looking out for the junior guys a lot. And if they needed something, there were times where there's usually 4 other engineering chiefs in the department, 3 or 4. And there was a time where I was one of the only chiefs on board for all of those divisions. So I did my best. I'm not saying I did anywhere near a great job or satisfying job, but I tried like hell to listen to them and do something that they needed. And so I do talk to a handful of them. There's some guys that are still getting out that'll reach out and we talk, but just to make sure they have a good transition, learn from my lessons, and don't repeat some of the junk I'm dealing with or being lazy about. So Yeah, those 4-year friends, it's always gonna hit me, I think, the same way. It's just I wish it were the same and that I could still have them here, and I think at the same time, I also realize people have lives and families and they're getting older and they do have, they've got this whole new 170 people to worry about or to think about. And so on top of moving every 4 years with 3 kids and their wife or spouse. And yeah, I think I'm being a little selfish there, but I do miss the 4-year friends. I think it's easy to get down on sometimes for sure.
Yeah, another thing, which also took me a long time to kind of realize was like not all of these memories and experiences are like easy to just think about, right? And not even because something bad happened, right? Like you could just be thinking back to one of your years, on the submarine, and like it just, you kind of get hit with these weird feelings of like, you kind of miss it, but you don't. And then you're confused, like, which one is it? Do I not miss it? And then you're like upset because you don't know which one it is. And then you miss people and blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, eventually I came to realize that like a lot of people probably aren't reaching out and like, hey, let's have like a bi-weekly like Zoom call and just shoot the shit. Like it's
Yeah,
because when they think back, like they're not thinking back on it either because they don't want to, right? Like they're like, I hated it. I just want to move on. And the sad truth is like you're part of those memories.
that's
So
for
like
sure.
it's not that they don't want to talk to Brandon. They don't want to think about anyone who had to do with that part of their life. Because when I first got out, I said this on my last video, I just wanted to be like kind of like Pinocchio, like a normal boy. I just wanted to hang out with my friends and like, what did you guys do in college? Like, oh my God, you guys had keggers underage. That's so cool. Like I didn't get to do shit. and and you just kind of like, I don't want to talk to those people who are still in, like, I don't want to hear the same motor pool story and like we went to the field for 2 weeks and it sucked. Like I don't want to remember that. And then eventually you'll see it could take you like a year, could take you 5 months, could take you 10 years. Eventually you'll just be okay with thinking about that. And you're like, that was just a time of my life. But a lot of veterans struggle because, and I see it all the time, like some dudes are still like 40, 50, 60-year-old vets who cannot, I think this might be one of your last topics you mentioned, they cannot find purpose in their life, whether it's the simplicity of civilian life of just working and then doing something with your hours after work before your next shift at work. That simplicity is like killing them inside because like it's like, what do you mean I can do stuff? I'm not used to
Yeah.
doing stuff, and they can't move on. And that's why you see these 60-year-old grumpy vets who are just like, oh, back when I was in an 87. It's like, dude, stop. Just stop.
Yeah, it's a lot to swallow, I think, because these aren't conversations I have on the regular. Is gaining a lot of good perspective from some of this. So I'm also processing it at the same time. Super thankful for it. I do. It did remind me of. I had a conversation. One of those guys I talk to all the time. We talk about sports, and NCAA was big. He's a huge Duke fan. I live in Virginia or North Carolina now, so Duke isn't too far away. So we were obviously talking a lot during the March Madness and really through the whole season. I remember one time I had brought up a joke about something being an EDIV problem. That was my division. It was always EDIV or mechanical MDiv. It's EDIV problem or MDiv problem. And we would probably spend more time arguing back and forth whose problem it was than actually fixing it. But I remember making a reference to one of the machines that we always argued on. And him and I were on the same section of watch together. So him and I had a lot of interactions and I was like, yeah, this is so funny, like, haha. And I'll never forget, he replied, he's like, dude, I never seen you so spun up and mad at me in your life. And I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even remember that. He's like, yeah, it like triggers me to talk about it. And I was like, man, so it kind of comes full circle now with a little new perspective, I think. And yeah, it's wild to think about. You do want to relive some of those memories at the same time, maybe, but you are a person outside of the military. I think that's what the ultimate struggle is finding who you are. Who do you want to be when you grow up? Is always what we used to ask on the midwife. What do you want to be when you grow up? Or you talk about all these things. We had a couple guys ended up going to Guam for their next tour. We would spend the whole, I used to have like, had a little more storage as a chief on a submarine. So I would bring some soda pops and whatnot, a couple 12 packs of soda, and I would fill up this bucket of ice from the galley and I would bring it back. And on a special occasion, I would have a soda with the same dude. Uh, and it was usually, I think, on like Sunday or something like that. And we would always talk about how great, because he was younger. I was like, bro, you're gonna live it up in Guam. Like, you're gonna have the best time on these boats and these parties and meet these people, and you're gonna do all this stuff. You're single, like life is good. And he actually went and did a bunch of that stuff. He was like, yeah, I want to go learn how to sail. He went and did it. He's like, I want to go drive through the desert. And he went and did it at these national parks and whatnot. I was like, you're not actually supposed to do the things you talk about on the mid-watch. But when you end up getting old, you get out and you're older, and what do you do now? Like I struggled. My first job was, I was so miserable doing that. And it was a rough transition for me because I was used to a different structure and hierarchy in an organization. And I always thought I'm going to love it when I get out because people will be held responsible and they'll get fired if they don't do their job. Life is not that simple. And I know rainbows and lollipops don't fall out of the sky every day, but like, for some reason, for me, that was such a big shocker. If anything, I'm more at risk because somebody's going to get offended that I'm spicing up my language with a cuss word every now and then, but it's 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 just really it's tough, I think, to find who you are and who you're meant to be. That I had kept, if you can imagine, if you're in a little tube that's the size of a football field with the same people over and over doing the same routine every day, like wake up from your 4-inch thick, $89 cost to the Department of Defense. It cost them $89 for this Skillcraft mattress. And if you're in the military, you know the brand Skillcraft. And this thing, you wake up from that after a miserable night's sleep. You go 25 feet this way to brush your teeth next to somebody who's using the bathroom and another person is taking the shower. And then you make your way and you eat breakfast as fast as you can after waiting in line. And you go back and relieve the watch. And now you're doing that for 8 hours. And then you get off and you repeat. And instead of going to the rack or on watch, now you're just doing maintenance and putting out fires and stuff. And so it's kind of like, it's just ridiculous to think that your mentality in that state gets really, really, really different. And so you're secluded, but you're still interacting with people. But it's the same small thing. And I'm sure it's not just Navy. I know it's definitely everywhere else, but you're not going home at night. You're not waking up and drinking mimosas on Sundays or whatever you do. You're going and you're just getting listen to the same music you brought because there's no Wi-Fi. So you get a little sad. And I remember writing down one time in my little journal was, I was like, I'm struggling between finding a meaning in life and finding a purpose in life. And, I still think I don't know the answer to that. What's my meaning and what's my purpose? Am I doing something just to be out here and to get the 9 to 5 done and to progress to the next day? Or am I out here doing something that really makes a difference, that I care about, that I find joy in what I do in life? I'm going to look back. Nobody's going to look back on my deathbed and say, thanks for working that holiday. Thanks for coming in that Saturday. Nobody's going to look back and say, hey, look at that guy. He got this award. And nobody says that at all. What matters is, did you do something meaningful and impactful that you can look back and say, yeah, I feel like I did a good job. And that's really hard to do, to find who you are. We all join for different reasons, but like, how many people join it enlisted with no experience or anything and say, yeah, I'm doing this to serve my country? I think that number is probably going down a lot more and more since, back in, 2001, it may have been a different story. But now we're in 2025. We're struggling with retention. We're struggling with enlisting people. And, between whatever the root cause is for that, and I'm sure I just triggered some people by saying root cause, but whatever the problem is like, it's mind blowing to me to think about all this stuff, that everybody's getting in with one reason. And it's, hey, I had a hard time in college, I've dropped out, or, I needed to get in there to get a paycheck to support my family, or hey, I had a kid, I want the benefits and stuff like that. Whatever the reason is, I want to explore the world, is what people say in the Navy. I want to go to all these cool port calls. My last boat didn't go to any ports. It was miserable. I felt terrible for those guys because my first boat did. But you end up thinking back to the purpose and meaning. I think you asked that question way too late. And I wouldn't expect anybody to ask it earlier, but when you get out, that's certainly going to hit you in the face at some point. And maybe your purpose and the thing you find meaning as well in is your family. And that's awesome. Maybe it's not, I think sometimes I sit around and I'm like, dude, I cannot sit still. I'm not doing anything productive and it frustrates me. And I also don't want to be doing work because that's also, not fun. But like, it's not like on Tuesday I'm going to go skateboard and on Wednesday I'm going to draw. And on Thursday I'm going to go into the pool and swim 3 laps. Like, what's it going to be? But it also can't be opening up, Coors Light pints every night and sitting down and just like, here's what it is. So struggling with that purpose and meaning is some of the hardest stuff I think I deal with. I'm fresh out still, so I'm still learning that perspective and that transition is.
Yeah. So to answer your question, retention is, well, it is very difficult. Recruitment numbers are going down. People will say some people will say they met retention numbers, and that's because I wrote a very in-depth article on this, but that's because a lot of the military branches changed their goals, right? Like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but like something like 67,000 troops short in 2024. And the people were freaking out, like, oh my God, why aren't people enlisting still? And it's for a lot, like, for example, you said not many people join because they're like, I just want to genuinely serve my country. That's probably like the 1% of the 1%, right? That are like, I don't care how much it sucks. I don't care how bad the pay is. Like, I'm super patriotic, and that's awesome. I knew people like that. My E7, my platoon sergeant, made that comment when I was a private. I don't remember what I said. I think we were just chatting, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get out. This isn't for me. It's not." I think I said like it's not enough money because it wasn't, and he was like, "It's not about the money. It's about serving." And I'm like, "Okay." But like I want to enjoy my life too, right? I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be broke like 5 days after every paycheck for the rest of my life. And I know for a fact the Navy like significantly dropped their recruiting standards. I don't remember the specifics, but like they were really, really struggling. I think they started giving out some big bonuses, but like they got real lax on their like handing out a lot of waivers, like new recruit weight requirements. I think the Navy dropped some tattoo policies. I don't remember what they were, but all the branches are struggling.
Yeah, the Navy dropped it from like their ASFAB. They dropped down to like a 10% is all you needed. And I get the ASFAB, isn't the best testing method, but like, bro, that is a low ASFAB score. Like maybe and their enlistment re-enlisting as a nuke is sweet because you can typically get up to $100,000 for 4-year re-enlistment if you time it right. They bumped that up to $140,000, and you used to get half up front, and then the next half would be split over the number of years you did it, and you would get an installment. They ended up bumping it up to like $140,000. This was when I got out that year. I had a friend take advantage of it, and you can request it all in one lump sum. So you can re-enlist in a tax-free zone and really make a killing. And they're still struggling, but they definitely did. These recruitment and retention numbers aren't on they're not on a year scale. These are 10-year processes where they're looking at the recruitment this year and how that's going to play out after their second enlistment. And they're starting when I was in during my second enlistment, I was an instructor at the A school for a few years. And I remember getting briefed from these personnel that were in charge of like overall manning and retention. And we asked them questions because our rate was hurting bad and we couldn't get new people for it. And I think that's really what ended up doing was the numbers just change. The metric and the pie charts that you show everybody are changing, but the retention's really not there.
Yeah, I mean, the bonuses that I didn't get any bonuses, but bonuses that I see now are like, I see people on TikTok like, oh, I re-enlisted for 4 years for $20,000. And it's funny because when you're 19 and you go to enlist and they're like, here's 20,000, you're like, wow, I'm rich, right? Like 20,000. Granted, after tax, 20,000 is like, I don't know, 13 or 14.
Right.
And then if you think about that, like when you're re-enlisting, like, okay, I got 20,000 for 4 years. Um, like realistically, you can get that if you have like a good job on the civilian side when you get out. I mean, some of my friends get 20,000 bonuses in 1 year working at their desk in a climate controlled environment. So it's like you have to weigh the pros and cons. The military is very good at like underpaying people and then being like, yo, here's 10,000. And then people are like, oh, it's like I gotta stay in for 10,000. Military is also really good at making people go into debt because you have a wife and then you have two kids and like a wife and two kids on like E5, E6. It's tough. It's not easy. Even when they're like, oh, I get a free house on base, it's like still tough.
Right. Yeah. That is. I always used to joke. I think it was one of the things I said that I don't have any children, but I always used to joke with my division. I'd be like, "Oh, this guy has two kids." And anytime I would refer to him, I was like, "Oh, he's got to take care of his like 18 kids today or something like that." Everybody always had 18 kids if they had one or more. Uh, but that is tough. I had served one of the guys I served with. He had 6 kids as E6. You just think to that as like, good Lord, that balance, just in your time, let alone your finances, is got to be perfect. Because you're right, you can live on base and get a decent house, but you're not getting any of that BAH. So that's all going away. And then Navy did some weird stuff with. I lived on base for like a 6-month period when I was going through the pipeline. They did some weird stuff where if you were above the 90th percentile in electricity use, you would have to pay like some difference. I don't know if they still do that or what the deal is with that, but that completely turned me off. So,
Yeah, you
yeah,
only
that's
get like X amount of utility usage or something.
right.
Um, I still see social media videos about the BH now, issues with it. One, the main issue being due to rent increasing so much and the BH was not increasing, that people were actually losing money living off post because if they got like, I don't know, $1,500 a month and they need like a 2 bedroom or something, and the 2 bedrooms like 1,800. So they're losing money. And so then their options are try to get a house on base, but not all these houses are in the best condition. The military is not the best at upkeeping them. And then two, like living on base has a lot of cons as well because they know you're right there. They
Right.
know, like if they call you in, like you can't be like 20 minutes out or like they can just come to your house if you live on base. So it's a tough scenario. And yeah, I knew E6s too that had like 4 or 6 kids. And I'm like, dude, how are you? There's no way you guys are like eating comfortably. Like
Yeah.
I know what your pay is.
Like there was one of my best friends on my tour, one of my 4-year friends, as I call it. He was our corpsman, and dude was rugged. I mean, like, this dude had some secrets that of how much of a badass he was, and he rarely told them, but he did. He had 6 kids, and I went over his house one time to split a bottle of bourbon, and of course, he wanted to do it on, like, a Sunday night. "We gotta work tomorrow, bud, but no fear. Let's go over there." Well, we drank down this whole fifth of, like, a really nice bourbon just about, and I was like, "Dude, you have a literal like, your backyard in a normal suburban area, nothing fancy. It's like a plot of land is turned into a swing set, and the rest of it is a vegetable garden. And that helps supplement a lot. And they had some chickens back there too. I mean, it was wild what he was able to do in that little spot. But he was telling me one time about, the cereal aspect or buying milk. He's like, yeah, if we get cereal, like, and we want it, we'll have to hide the whole box because that gallon of milk and that box of cereal will be gone in a day. Especially you start getting like teenagers and I mean, I know how I eat when I get home from work. I'm grinding through bags of munchies and Pringles or whatever. Like I'll eat like 4 bananas. Like it doesn't matter. If it's there, I'm gonna do it. And it's just how can you do that with 6 kids, man? That blows my mind. I guess you gotta turn your yard into a vegetable garden. 18 kids, 6 kids, it's all the same.
Yeah, I remember um, the Army did this thing. I don't know if it was just the Army, but every Thanksgiving, um, for for the soldiers that were married, the unit had like X amount of tickets that they could hand out, and it would be for a free turkey because like turkeys are pretty expensive, right? Like $40, $50,
Yeah.
and it's crazy to think that families can't afford a turkey on Thanksgiving, but like, dude, sometimes depending when that paycheck hits, like it's $50, that you just don't have it, right? So I remember like my BC, my battery commander, handing out these tickets because it's a lottery, and then like some families didn't get it, and I was like, why can't we just give everybody a ticket who has? I'm like guys, how are you not confirming that your soldiers can afford a Thanksgiving meal?
That's I'm telling you, that kind of thought process is what's missing. I mean, that's all. It is sometimes the salty guys like, hey, back in my day, this is how we did it. But I think the thought process as a whole needs to change, which is why every leadership cycle in the Navy, you get a little bit excited when you get like a new chief or something. My last command was a special command, and a good chunk of the leaders in my position were second tour. Some of us, I would say probably a third of us were first tour as a divisional chief. And, that was because of some of the stuff you have to deal with and the experience level needed to be able to satisfy that and the repercussions it would have had if something went wrong. It blows my mind to think about that sometimes there are kids out there that are 18 or 19 years old that are going to be in your division now or come to your unit that don't have a driver's license. That's like kind of blows my mind in the military how that's a common thing. But if you've been in, somebody's going to show up without a driver's license. Somebody's going to be walking to work 3 miles every day, or they're going to have one car because it's all they can afford, and they've got a family, or their wife is pregnant, and they're trying to not, they don't know how to speak up about these things. It's really tough. My last unit, I got a phone call about 9 months after I got out from one of the chiefs that was attached to the unit. And he said, "Hey, it's not a good phone call." I'm like, "Oh, what am I going to get? Like, am I going to get called by NCIS soon or something like that? Did I somehow do something wrong? I'm going to go back into that nice little room and get asked a bunch of questions." But one of the guys took his life, and he was in my division, so they called me and wanted me to know. And I just think back to like this kid was so young. He was 20 years old, or maybe just turned 21. He wasn't old at all. Been in the Navy for about 2 blinks of an eye, and he had a really tough time adapting. And that was a little bit of a struggle, but he did it, and he was actually good at what he did. Where we failed him was not being able to advocate in the best ways for what he needed. I think he had family that was a couple states away. He didn't know how to balance that life effort out in those areas, and he was one of those people who was really close to his family. So how do you look out for all these aspects of personal development and taking care of people personally while also developing them professionally? I think we hit the professional mark most of the time, but the personal mark is, dude, it's wild to think about. Turkeys, for instance. I would always think I probably still bet I would go back if I was in my 20s and on my first tour, I would say, dude, what a ripoff. They get free turkeys. After having served in my last tour, it's like, you don't know whether that guy came from a house without running water or whether he's a Bitcoin millionaire. You're going to have both of them. And so now you need to adapt to both of that. How will I make sure this guy is surviving out here? This guy's got, we made a big push for financial like training, I guess, and really higher education and using the TA benefit and stuff like that, and being financially smart were like secondary objectives we wanted our sailors to be, personally smart with. And then one of the guys I found out had like an exuberant amount of credit card debt through some of these conversations. And welcome to the military where that's going to happen. Every now I know somebody's out there, and I hope people make great decisions, but life is not always going to be that great. And I don't know what's happened. Maybe it's medical, or maybe it's the first time they had money. Cook, first time he gets his paycheck, he buys his mom a Gucci purse because they've had nothing nice before. And so you start thinking back to these guys that are like, I've got crippling credit card debt. Okay, now I need to figure out how to handle this scenario, or how to get him training with a financial specialist to figure his way out of these things. It could be the turkey, maybe the turkey is what's really going to save those people the next day. That hits home for me a lot. So I really wish we would do a better job looking out for people like that. I think that's where we're missing a lot.
I mean, people in the military, I think, are just notoriously bad with their finances. And there's a plethora of reasons why. Like you mentioned, one, people never had any form of paycheck before, even if it's really low. Like I went from minimum wage, which back then was like $7.25. And I mean, the pay wasn't great, but then I went to getting like 500 a week or something as an E1. And I was like, oh, this is like pretty cool. I mean, it still wasn't that much, but on top of that, there's the joke like privates always get like brand new Camaros with 30% interest.
Yeah.
And like it's true because I've seen it. I've seen people deploy to Iraq for 12 months, come back and spend all like 50,000 of their saved up tax-free money on like some stupid Infinity. And like it's cool, like if that's what you want, like that's cool. But like to me it was like you could have died over there. And now you're putting yourself in a situation where like when re-enlistment time comes up, I guarantee that car bill is going to scare you into being like, I'll just do another 3, when maybe you could have got out and then, you re-enlist for 3, 6 months later, you're like, I don't know if I could do another 2.5, right? Like mentally, I'm not doing well. So I think every soldier in the unit should get like financial literacy training, like saving money, spending money. Because when I was in, I didn't know anything about credit cards.
Oh, I
Like
know.
I didn't understand how like interest building up worked. Like I just had my military star card, which is like the military credit card, and I spent it at the commissary. And like my thought process was like, hey, I'm getting paid every 2 weeks for the next 3 years. Like I'll figure it out then. But
It is, and it's, to be fair, like the military, like I said, you get into the large organization bureaucracy aspect of it, is they do have the check in the box programs. The Navy, at least they do. They have like Millionaire Sailor or something like that was the program they had. And when you're really junior, you go into this like 1-day course or 2-day course, and you talk about how to do this and how to become a millionaire. And a few people, I'm sure, do it. I served with one on my shore tour who was real close to the $1 million mark in the stock market. He was E8 at the time, but that's not nearly that. I mean, that's a true exception, and I agree. And it's like one of the conversations I was having with that, the guy I served with that I said was a Duke fan, was he really wished that there was a training, on project management, that we would train people like how to manage these different availabilities or maintenance periods, import or deployed or on a mission, whatever it was, and how to really manage that. And that's a transferable skill, but it can't be this one and done or yearly cyber awareness training type stuff. It's got to be a continuous buildup. I think with, this is a little different than the financial training, but I think it needs to be continuous, and there's got to be something there. Like the problem is it's so easy. I wish I could offer a solution. I want to, but like you start looking at all the differences of command to command and then their objectives, and then you start getting into, okay, what's already filling their day up? And now how do we load this in there that's going to be effective and useful? It starts getting complex, and it's a really complex problem. It doesn't mean we should put it off at all. I'm just saying that it's really, really complex, like the project management stuff. Great. But the first question I asked him is, what about the guys who have no interest in that? Some people are throttlemen for life. Some people don't want to do this stuff and they're content where they are. And to be honest, if that's where they're content, that's where I want them as a leader. I want them there because they're the best at it there. It's a guy that wants to go do this other stuff and advance to this next level or this different career path. If they want to do that, then how do I afford them the training and the mentorship along the way and make it successful and progressive and unified across the fleet so that everybody's speaking the same language? That's tough. And that's where I get back into toxic leadership. Sometimes I will speak about chief season. I'll probably get, hit on a little bit for it, but when you get selected for chief in the Navy, you go through an initiation season. It's probably going to change now with the way that advancement's going with selecting orders and stuff, but when I did it, it was still under the old way. You get selected. Once you're selected, you go through an initiation. After initiation, you get pinned, and then you go to your command, your next command, depending on how much time you've been at the one you're at. But during that initiation, you're working with this group of people from all walks of life that also got selected with you on these different group projects or group effort, tasks. And you will realize really quickly that you are on a different level than everybody else in there. Some people are better than you and more experienced, I guess is what I mean there. Some people are more experienced in some areas than you. And some people are like, dude, how did you get here? And I'm sure some people thought both things about me at some times. I know I had those thoughts. There are those people, you get 6 weeks to now become the backbone of the Navy. How the heck do you expect somebody to figure out who needs a turkey for Thanksgiving when they can't even figure out how to follow a task correctly? And so there's a lot of times people aren't prepared for these things whatsoever. It's papers, you get so much space of 10-point font, and that's going to determine whether this person gets selected or not. Come on now, and it's, how do you fix that? It's just this whole thing. And that's now sailors aren't getting taken care of. How are you going to make sure the next person is trained if they want project management in that aspect, or if they need financial help in that aspect? You got to work as a cohesive group as chiefs. That's really the secret of it. Is you got to use each other and rely on each other because there's nobody else with an answer. So you have to figure it out, which is why I'm still part of that Facebook group, by the way. If I still have people reach out to me with problems, I can reach out to one of them and say, let me get up-to-date answer for you, or get you in contact with somebody who might know more. But I mean, the reality is some people just don't ask the questions to the right people, or they don't know what question to ask her. You get a phone call from somebody who's taken their life, or somebody's, wife literally come back from a deployment and they took all their money and furniture, and guess what? Their car got repoed. How do you handle that stuff? And that throws you as a young leader into a wild spot too. So it's a very complex problem.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of interesting scenarios that the military gets into. And I agree, like leaders should have ongoing training in multiple different areas. How to make sure their troops understand their finances, supporting mental health. I don't know, anything from like how to wind down from a stressful week, like, I don't know, fun things to do in the areas. Like, it's tough. Like, when I was a new private, I went to Oklahoma. No clue what to do there. And like, none of your leaders are like, hey, you should do, there's like a national park. You should go check it out. They're just like, they just go home to their wives and like, they're like, whatever. But to wrap it up here, what you being out for almost two-ish years now, what is some advice you would give to people in the military who are thinking of getting out, or veterans that have gotten out and maybe recently separated, so they're not really sure what to do? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I would say the first thing you need to do is find out who you are, what your meaning and purpose is. And that's tough because that's not going to take, 2 nights to figure out, and you're going to land on a solution. I'm having this conversation with one of the sailors I served with 2 years ago. Right now, I'm still going through this conversation. But if you're already out, figuring out who you are and what you want to be is what you need to do. What your meaning and purpose is. If you don't know, then that's perfectly fine and that's okay. What are you going to do in the meantime to progress figuring that out so you don't land in a terrible spot? And it's okay if you need to find a different job or something like that, or or move around, figure out what you can do and go do it. To those who are considering getting out, I say the same thing, what's your meaning and purpose? Maybe you are called and enjoy what you're doing and love mentoring the personally and professionally the development of junior enlisted or officers, whatever the case may be. But why are you there? Does it make sense? Are you really happy? Because you've got maybe at best 2 lives to live. The first is the one that you're living now, and the second is going to be when you realize that this is the only one you've got. That's really where you're at. Is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? Do you find purpose? Do you find meaning in it? If the answer is no, then time to start having those real conversations with each other and with yourself, really. I used to joke all the time. The first thing I would do if I needed to have a hard discussion with somebody is get out my inspection mirror and look myself right in the face, because I'm going to start there. I think getting out was one of the best choices I could have ever made. It has helped me in my family life. And I think 2 years down the road, if I'm still finding things I'm struggling with, that Lord knows how much more bottled up it would have been if I stayed in for another 7 or 8 years. So that's my advice to them, to really figure that out. While you're in, if you're still in though, start thinking about those junior enlisted more and start asking how you're going to be different than the status quo, meet the objective, but also treat them like people and not like parts.
Some solid advice. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.